Probably the point we're making.
Which is, I think you've made that point very sufficiently when you talked about the area that has given you the most hope, or the area that has, kept your hopes up, which is the entertainment industry. Creative thinking was what got the young people, because if you look at the demographics of that industry, you see that there are lots of young people.
That's right.
Doesn't that also say something about where it is we should be focusing? Because if you say that over 60%, and I think usually about 70% is what is quoted, of the population of Nigeria, or even of Africa, or even of the world, being that of young people, shouldn't we be focusing on creating or harnessing the talent in these people to ensure that we actually get out of where we are?
No, absolutely. That's, that goes without saying. Like somebody said, that the true source of wealth is not the resources beneath the ground, but it is indeed the feet that are above the ground. That's a true statement to make.
Are we looking there?
Well, I would say we, honestly, again, I want to stay positive and not be cantankerous in any way in my sort of thinking, and indeed how I respond to you. But I wish we can do more. I wish we would pay a lot more attention to our human resources, and utilization of our human resources, and come up with, policies for people development, to put people to work, to basically leverage, what is arguably perhaps our biggest resource. But if I was to take you a little back to one of the previous questions, and I'm not sure we did justice to that, is, the paradigm shift that some of us are now advocating, that you can indeed begin to move the oil economy from being a cash cow to being a catalyst for growth. Yeah? So you can move it from being a cash cow to being a catalyst for growth. What we're doing currently is that we're funding our recurrent expenditure and our operating expenses from revenues from oil. Now, what's wrong with that? What's wrong with this? With that is that, one, this is a depletable resource. It's non-replaceable. Okay, it's a depletable, non-replaceable resource. It is equivalent to funding your home with Dash, or adjusting your lifestyle to because you have received the Dash. What you do with a bonus is you invest it. So what should we be doing rather with the whole talk about IGR, and I'm sure you've heard, your ears are full of IGR, and what is unrealistic about our approach to IGR right now is that we don't even have reasonable targets or the reference for certain IGR targets is entirely wrong. Because what we should be looking to do is fund our recurrent expenditure, fund the bureaucracy, fund the civil service, fund the regular bureaucracy from tax receipts from non-oil activities. Those are the ones that you're going to have over time. And that's how you should be setting your IGR targets, for example, to say to the states that you can no longer fund your civil service 100% or to whatever degree with tax receipts, from oil revenue. But you should begin to set target to say, okay, from in this year, in 2016, for example, we're going to fund the bureaucracy, that the IGR no longer then becomes the IGR doesn't become an extra take, but in fact becomes the source of your, of your normal activities. And we need to flip things around so that the revenue that we earn from natural resources, now by this I'm talking about oil, solid minerals, and all replaceable, depletable, non-replaceable resources, should be utilized differently. Now, if you ask me, I can tell you, share a few thoughts about how it should be utilized.
We'll come back to that quickly, but listen to you, I also see that we need to get all of this activated, and we have to look at some key ministries, agencies, and parasites when we talk about activating some of these things, because for us to talk about national planning and looking at some key issues and key sector, it has to start from the national planning so that some of the key sectors can start to activate their own key sectors, and everyone can key in and see what they can do. Some other cities that you've talked about, that now have oceans and rivers and beaches, even though they were once upon a time a desert. And now the tourist attraction, in fact, it now has become a tourist destination. If you put that side by side with what is happening with the dollar and even the BDC operators who started saying that, hey, wait a minute, if you say we should source for fund, it's because we don't have a lot of tourists coming into our country. In other places, you can easily source for fund because you have tourists who come in, whether you are going for pilgrimage in Saudi Arabia or in Jerusalem, a couple of other places. So we're looking at how we can activate all of this. National Planning, Ministry of Tourism, Ministry of Information and Culture, the NOA, so they are very, very key in helping us now that we are in this situation. Shouldn't we start asking questions of government, what they intend to do now that we are already here? That can as well help people see where we're headed.
Again, I totally agree with you. And this is about really having a different kind of conversation. I tell some of my friends that there are some conversation I hear on the streets, and not that I go, but what we typically refer to as beer parlor conversations, and it really doesn't bother me. Yeah, because again, I probably expect to hear that kind of conversation, in those places. But when people who should know better, those who come on your program, and those who probably occupy the citadels of what is referred to globally as the ivory tower, begin to have what I refer to as banal conversations, that really begins to worry me. In a sense, I do feel like the intelligentsia or the educated elites of this country have let it down by simply not having the quality of conversation that moves the nation forward. We need to elevate the consciousness of this country to the point, you get to broadcast one of such program hosts. I'm aware, and I'm sure there are many more. The platform, for example, that broadcasts once every year, that sort of elevated conversation, that will begin to hold those who have the reins of leadership accountable, to the people for the right actions. Again, if I was to touch on Dubai, Dubai has been built, Dubai, by the way, in the UAE is the least endowed in terms of natural resources. As a matter of fact, Abu Dhabi and the other regions are where you have most of the oil wells. Dubai has indeed come out of good thinking. And when they came up with a plan to turn it essentially into, this sort of global mall and global real estate destination and whatever else that it is, when they came up with those kinds of plans, at the very last stage, it was going to stall and not fly. Because, just a second, it was going to stall and not fly because then people were not able to trust the dispute resolution system. And what they did was to create an international dispute resolution system, which they handed over to a British professor to run. The point I'm making is that it was only then they were able to unlock the flow of finance into Dubai that has helped it to grow today. So I totally agree with you that we do need to begin to hold, those who are in government and ourselves accountable to very high standards of national planning.
Well, speaking about thinking and what we need to do just before we wrap up, I see Upong here who says, well, clearly oil is not selling, and then he says there's a budget for exploration in the northeast. It should be used for solid minerals and manufacturing, and there are several countries at this time, nobody's drilling, everybody's being strategic. Are we still drilling?
No, that begs the question. I'm not sure I totally agree with him. Indeed, like I said before, that throughout the history of the oil industry, it's gone up and it's come down. My attitude essentially is that this period is probably one of the best for acquisition. The cost of exploration, the cost of drilling, and a lot of activities in the oil industry will typically be down. So if you have a stash of cash to be able to pursue those kinds of activities, you should. So all of those are political statements, and they beg the issue, they beg the question. So those who have become, notably, Exxon has grown that way. In this sort of period, they invest heavily because you can buy on the cheap, you can acquire on the cheap, and then when the prices go up, then you rake. Yeah. So that's hardly the issue.
But on the whole, we're optimistic. We can do this.
Well, absolutely, we have a great opportunity to grow. I would say let us not waste this crisis. Nigeria has the potential to become, one of the leading economies and people in the world.
All right,
and we
Mr.
should do that on behalf of the black man.
All right, Israeli is a partner, Sterling Partnerships, and also Director, Aspen Energy Nigeria Limited. Thank you for coming on today.
Thank you for having me. It's a privilege all the time.
All right, then we'll be back. We're still focused on the oil sector, but a different kind of matter. You'll find out in a moment. Don't go away.